Ah, Hi, this is Marty Schultz. I'm the co-founder and president of Objective Ed. I want to thank the American Printing House for the Blind, especially Leanne and Jim, for helping us arrange this webinar. Some of you may know me from Blindfold Games. I was the founder of Blindfold Games, where we created over 80 accessible entertainment games for visually impaired teens and adults. Leanne, do you want to have Mike jump in now?
That's what I'm going to have you do. If you'll stop sharing, I am going to highlight a very special guest appearance of Mike Hudson coming to you live from the museum. Hi, Mike.
Hi, guys. So I'm Mike Hudson. You are live in Louisville, Kentucky right now at the Museum of the American Printing House for the Blind. We're in front of our obstacle detector case, and I'm going to pull out a real treasure. So this is one of the original prototypes of the Cranberg U.S. Army Signal Corps obstacle detector. So in the mid-40s, in the middle of World War II, the U.S. government was already looking at how do we adapt all of this technology that we've developed for destruction, how do we adapt it for post-war civilian uses? And Cranberg was a physicist who was working for the U.S. Army Signal Corps on adapting radar and sonar for use as an obstacle detector by people who are blind or visually impaired. And this is one of his original prototypes, very heavy. And basically the way the Cranberg obstacle detector worked was it shot out a beam of light, and when the light was reflected back to the unit, the detector would detect it and communicate to the user. Later, actual production models of this detector were made by RCA, and in those cases, in the handle, there was a vibrator that would vibrate faster as you got closer to something that the unit was detecting. I'm not sure exactly how this one communicated with its user. I think it was maybe with an earphone in the ear. But it's very heavy. The secret in all this is really not the radar and the sonar, it's in the battery. And so when you pick up your cell phone today and the battery weighs nothing and it lasts forever, that would have really been handy for Mr. Lawrence Cranberg. He developed this in the 1940s. And there's a whole generation of obstacle detectors that roll out of this simple prototype, ends up in literally what's called the laser cane in the 1970s and 1980s. Back to you guys.
Thank you so much. And Marty, you can share your screen.
Great. So on this slide are some of the awards we've won recently, including the Touch of Genius Award from the National Braille Press, the Innovator of the Year Award from the Florida AER, the Annual Award from the American Council for the Blind for creating educational apps, an award from Microsoft to use artificial intelligence in the Objective Ed gamified curriculum, and a grant from the Department of Health and Human Services to build an employment training games for transition students. Thanks for joining me, and if you have any questions, please reach us at info@objectiveed.com. A couple of other important features about this webinar. Remember, there is a chat area. If you want to send us chat information, make sure you send it to everybody so everyone can see it. I'll be answering questions at the end of the webinar, but you can send them at any time. In addition to receiving the ACV Rep credit, as a second thank you, we'll be giving away 4 Amazon gift certificates. If you want to enter that drawing that we'll announce on Tuesday, just leave your name, email, school district, and phone number in the chat window, and like I said, we'll announce it tomorrow. I'd also like to thank Gina Carr from the Illinois School for the Visually Impaired, who'll be talking about our Braille Literacy system, and Tim Falbert from the Wisconsin School for Blind and Visually Impaired, who'll be talking about his school's experience with Objective Ed. And also joining me is Jason Stewart, Objective Ed's Director of Customer Success. I appreciate everyone stopping by. I'm going to be discussing what teachers told us from their experience in using Objective Ed's digital reinforcement learning system during the COVID pandemic last spring. You'll have the opportunity to hear from many of your colleagues. When we started Objective Ed, we knew that reinforcement learning was important for students to master many of the skills in the expanded core curriculum. By playing skill-building games, the students could make progress on their IEP goals and objectives between sessions with their itinerant specialists, such as a TVI or an O&M. When the COVID pandemic hit, we realized that our reinforcement learning system could be used for distance learning as well. A student could practice skills independently, and their teacher could monitor that student's progress remotely. Starting in March of this year, we told teachers that they could use our reinforcement learning digital curriculum for free until the end of the school year. We heard from over 3,000 teachers throughout the world, and about 500 school districts signed up. At this point, thousands of teachers and their students are using Objective Ed for distance and hybrid learning. Let's watch a short video about how Objective Ed's reinforcement learning works.
As teachers, you know that there is never enough time to teach and practice all the skills your students need to know. With Objective Ed, we help your students practice the skills you taught them through fun and exciting games. We have many different skills that can be taught using our games, so simply activate the one that fits your students' IEP goals. Then, a version of that game that focuses on training the skills you specified will be sent to the cloud and then to your student's tablet device. Students will learn and practice while they play. After the student finishes playing the game, the information is sent back to your teacher dashboard. Using the dashboard, you can watch your students' progress as they improve over time. You can then export that data and import it into your student's IEP progress report. At Objective Ed, we help students achieve their best educational outcomes. As teachers,
So what exactly is Objective Ed? Well, Objective Ed is a reinforcement learning system that allows students to practice skills using fun and accessible games. Now, in the past, games have been a very inefficient way for students to work on skills. Games can often expose students to many different mechanics. Some mechanics may be too easy for them, some too hard. Games rarely focus on what's appropriate for the student and what you want them to practice. Well, Objective Ed games are different. Our games will automatically adjust themselves to focus on the skills you want your students to work on. That means the student gets to play a fun and accessible game, and you get to make sure the game is appropriate for them and only addresses those skills you want them to work on. How this works is that based on the student's IEP or on the skills you're covering with them in their lesson, you assign skills on the Objective Ed web dashboard that you want them to work on. Our games automatically adjust themselves to focus only on those skills. The student can play the game at home or in a car or in the resource room and work on that skill. And the game automatically uploads all the data on how they're doing to the web dashboard. And you can monitor their progress and download that data to include in the progress report. This means that there are two parts to the Objective Ed system. There's the web dashboard, which is what you'll use to set your students up and assign them those skills you want them to work on. And there's the iPad and iPhone application. This is what students use to play the games and work on the skills you've assigned to them. Students can download this application by searching for Objective Ed in the App Store. Think about Objective Ed like this. The web dashboard is for you and the application is for the student. On the web dashboard, you'll assign skills to your students that you want them to work on. Let's say you have a student who's practicing directionality concepts. You could assign them skills to work on relative instructions, clock, and cardinal instructions. When you assign these skills to your student on the web dashboard, our games will automatically adjust themselves to focus on just those skills. So the student can open up the app, begin playing the game, and work on those specific skills. Let's watch a brief video that shows you how a student can play these games to work on those skills.
This is Sarah. For the past 8 years, she's been an itinerant TVI and O&M. Sarah works with 6 students who have vision impairments. Back from summer vacation, she was just told that her school is going to a hybrid schedule. She must provide orientation and mobility instruction to her students remotely. She heard of Objective Ed and decides to give it a try. Maya is one of Sarah's students. Sarah worked with Maya last year. Maya is now in 1st grade and is working on directionality. Maya's IEP includes a goal that Maya will be able to demonstrate the ability to use the clock analogy for orientation. Sarah logs in to the Objective Ed web dashboard for teachers and selects a game and a skill to match that IEP goal. She chooses the Barnyard game to practice clock directions and sets it to use only directions for 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock. Sarah downloads the Objective Ed app onto the iPad that Maya will use. The Barnyard game appears and is ready for Maya to play. Sarah gives Maya the iPad and Maya starts investigating the game. Using the iPad's built-in voiceover function, she finds the Barnyard button and double taps it. The game begins. Maya hears a short tutorial and starts playing. When the end of the school day is over, Maya's mom picks her up. As soon as Maya gets in the car, she pulls out the iPad, finds the Barnyard game, and starts playing. A few days later, before their next online session, Sarah wants to see how well Maya is progressing on her directionality. She signs in to the Objective Ed web dashboard and looks at Maya's progress. Sarah sees that Maya has mastered these simple clock directions. During their Zoom session, Sarah confirms Maya's understanding of simple clock directions. Using the Objective Ed web dashboard, Sarah sets Barnyard to use full clock directions, and Maya can't wait to continue playing the game.
Now, a couple of points that I do want to make here. While all of our games have bright visuals, they're designed to be played just like audio. The entire application is fully accessible with VoiceOver, so the experience for all students will be exactly the same. Now, as a student plays the games and works on the skills that you've assigned them, all the data on how they're doing will be uploaded back onto the web dashboard, so you can monitor their progress and see exactly how they're doing. You will even receive very detailed data on the specific things a student is doing well with, or maybe the things a student needs to spend more time on. You'll be able to see if there's a certain accessibility gesture, for example, the student is struggling with. Maybe they're doing really well with West as a prompt, but need to spend more time on East. All of this data is made available to you on the web dashboard. I want to talk now a little about using Objective Ed for reinforcement of skills. Objective Ed was never meant to be a replacement for any of the time you spend with a student in a lesson. Objective Ed is a fun and accessible way for students to practice and work on skills using fun games. And of course, provide you with the data on how they're doing. How this works is you'll have a lesson with your student. Your lesson could be in person or remote using something like Zoom. And based on what you're covering, you'll assign them skills on the web dashboard that you want them to work on. You can assign them skills to practice clock directions, practice identifying animal sounds, or work on mental mapping. Once you assign these skills to them on the web dashboard, the games automatically adjust themselves to focus on those skills. The student can practice and play games, and you can monitor their progress and make any adjustments if needed. Now you'll have an opportunity to hear from your colleagues who have used Objective Ed. You get a sense of how other O&Ms, TVIs, and assistive technology specialists have used the system.
So I've been working with kids for only 2 business days and then the shutdown. And so when they sent us all home, I thought, okay, well, that was really nice. I guess it's over. And then a week later, they say, we want you to go to a meeting. And I'm going to be teaching 4, 5, 6-year-olds mobility online remotely. It's the opposite of what our profession usually does, especially with people so young. They said, okay, you're going to do it every Friday. And yeah, of course I'll do this. When I got to the parents, they had already had a week or 2 of school already online. And I could see that some of them were really quite fatigued. It was usually a mom. She was usually working full time at home and had between 1 and 3 children that she was also managing their 1-room schoolhouse. The fatigue and emerging exhaustion was palpable. So when I started explaining to one mom that there was this game that would teach really important mobility concepts to her 6-year-old, I could see a worried look on her face. And I said, well, you know, he has an iPad, it's okay. And she still looked concerned. I said, well, these are completely accessible. He won't need any help with this. And I could just see her start to relax and open up. The relief on her face was very clear. And now she learned that these games would really give important education to her child about directionality, laterality, wayfinding that were truly valuable, and also that he could do independently. And so that was really meaningful for the parents. I asked them to apply it through their house. And because they already understood it through the game, it was easily applied through the house. It made a big difference in their emerging wayfinding skills. So it was extremely valuable and so very appreciated.
That was Beth Scott. Beth had primarily been working with adults for most of her career and just started working with kids when the pandemic lockdown happened. I want to talk a little bit more about some of the games Beth used with her students. The first is Barnyard, which you've already seen a brief demonstration of earlier. Barnyard is our directionality game. Students use this game to practice 2- or 4-way swiping and dragging, and they are prompted with relative cardinal or clock directions, all depending on where they're at, with directionality and what skills you assign them on the web dashboard. Wayfinding is a game to help students practice mental mapping and navigation skills, and is scaffolded on Barnyard. In this game, the students will navigate through a virtual town, and there are all sorts of audio cues to give the student a sense of where they are, whether they're walking on the sidewalk or on the road, if they're near a crosswalk or intersection, and what buildings are around them. Students will have to follow GPS instructions and deliver items to various different buildings in the town as part of the quest. This is a great way for students to become familiar with GPS systems like Google Maps or Blind Square, while also practicing their mental mapping and wayfinding skills.
Right now, we've got, I think, 12 students for our virtual pro. So we've got 14 to 18-year-olds. I'm looking to use Objective Ed more with, obviously, our life kids. One of the big things that we've done is work the iPhone gestures. Our O&M department has used the applications to show the clock faces, cardinal directions, things like that. We want to incorporate it where we can because we definitely see the value of it. It's a fun way for her to really get those down. So.
Yeah.
I like the way the dashboard is. You can just pick it up and start. You don't really have to have any prior knowledge because it talks you through how to begin with the apps and how to use them. I like that. I like that you've incorporated the O&M piece. And I've actually put myself in as a student so I could see it from both sides, look at the instructor side, and then also as a student and looking at some of the apps there too. So that's how I look at a lot of the things that you guys are doing is a reinforcement piece, not to take over for an instructor standpoint, but at least to say, let's make this fun. Let's make it a way for you to remember what you've learned in the classroom. It's a huge gap. They're missing a lot of technology skills that the TVIs just don't have time to provide. And so I like what you guys are doing to kind of bridge that gap a little bit.
That was Mike Fish from the Virginia Rehab Center. And Mike primarily used our assistive technology games with his students. I want to talk briefly about these games. These are games to help students practice accessibility gestures, primarily relative to iOS's VoiceOver. These games can be used to practice all gestures from single finger swipes and taps up to more complicated gestures like using the rotor or shaking or twisting or scrubbing. We have 2 games to help students practice gestures. Simon, which students work on their sequencing and memory skills, and Speed Gesture, which has students practice reaction time. Both of these games can be configured so that you can choose exactly what gestures you want the students to work on. You can start them out practicing with a single finger swipe and taps, and move them on to more complicated gestures once you feel they're ready. Here's a short video that shows how these games are used.
Remember Sarah? She's the itinerant TVI and O&M who works with several students who have low vision. Some of her students need assistive technology training, and Sarah must provide this training on a hybrid schedule. Sarah heard of Objective Ed and decides to give it a try. Kamal is one of Sarah's students. Kamal just received an iPad to use in some of his classes. Kamal's IEP includes an assistive technology objective that Kamal will learn how to operate the iPad using voiceover gestures. Using the Objective Ed web dashboard for teachers, Sarah picks both the Speed Gesture and Simon games for Kamal to use. She configures both games to focus on tapping and swiping with one finger. Sarah downloads the Objective Ed app onto the iPad that Kamal will use. The speed gesture game appears and is ready for Kamal to play. Sarah gives Kamal the iPad and he starts playing the game. The game begins. Kamal hears a short tutorial and starts playing. The game says, tap with one finger, and Kamal does it. Then the game says, swipe with one finger, and Kamal does it. At the end of the school day, Kamal's dad picks him up. As soon as Kamal gets in the car, he pulls out the iPad, finds the speed gesture game, and starts playing. A few days later, before their next online session, Sarah wants to see how well Kamal is progressing on his iPad gesture skills. She signs into the Objective Ed web dashboard and looks at Kamal's progress. Sarah sees that Kamal's mastered simple tapping and swiping. During their Zoom session, Sarah confirms Kamal is comfortable using some of the gestures on his iPad. Using the Objective Ed dashboard, Sarah sets the speed gesture and Simon games to now focus on swiping up, down, left, and right with 1 and 2 fingers. Sarah knows that by the time Kamal hits the highest level of the game, he'll have mastered using the complex iPad gestures that operate the voice-over rotor.
Now let's hear from some O&Ms from the Los Angeles Unified School District so you can get a sense of how they use the system.
Once I got used to it, it was very helpful, and I think that the two students were very different, but they enjoyed it. One was a young preschooler, and one was a high school student. He may have some minor learning disabilities, very minor. He really enjoyed the Asteroid. He spent a lot of time, and I think they benefited from it. The little girl, the younger student, she played many of the games, the barnyard, and she was practicing iPad skills in her compass directions, and she was improving. Overall, it was beneficial for them. Once I got
experience with 2 students, 3rd graders. They played the game for 2 hours apiece. And navigating the app and setting up the skills, I found it pretty intuitive. That was very nice.
One 5th grader who loved it and looks like he's still playing. You know, he really got a lot out of it. He was doing the clock face directions. He was doing asteroids quite a bit, and that was really important for him because he does not make accurate left and right turns, 90-degree turns, and then the different degrees of turns. That's the stuff we talked about. Like, okay, in this game, you're going to have to make a really good left turn. You're going to have to make a really good right turn and do it accurately because he kind of, you know, he's got that sort of mushy circle around him where he turns or wherever he happens to wind up. So that was great for him. He loves wearing headphones, doing anything that makes noise.
That's cool. One game that was mentioned here that I do want to talk about is our game Audio Asteroid. Audio Asteroid is a game that helps students practice sound localization. It's the one game we have that we do recommend students wear headphones for, but any pair of headphones will work. Using Audio Asteroids, students will practice finding sounds around them in the 3D space. Here's a quick video that describes how it's used. Sorry.
This month, Sarah, an itinerant TVI and O&M, is working with one of her students, Jose, on auditory awareness. Normally, Sarah has 1 session a week with Jose, but due to the pandemic, she is visiting with Jose only twice a month. His other sessions are remote. One of Jose's IEP objectives is to localize a sound by turning and pointing to a sound source. A month ago, Sarah's school signed up for Objective Ed. Sarah logs into the Objective Ed web dashboard for teachers and selects the Audio Asteroid game for Jose. That's one of the games that builds auditory awareness skills. Sarah configures Audio Asteroid at the beginner level. She sets the game to focus on detecting sounds from the left versus sounds from the right and chooses the largest asteroid size. Sarah explains to Jose that he will hear an asteroid approach from either the left or right. As soon as he hears it, He needs to swivel the chair in the direction of the approaching asteroid and tap the screen. Sarah says to Jose, "Are you ready?" And Jose says yes. Jose hears the asteroid approaching as the sound gets louder and louder. Jose detects that it's coming from his left, so he swivels his chair to the left. When the asteroid sound is really loud and is centered in his head, since Jose has turned toward the sound, he taps the screen. Jose hears he just scored a few points in the game. Later that night, Jose sits in his mom's swivel chair and starts playing Audio Asteroid. He's having a great time smashing asteroids as he turns left and right. A few days later, before their next session, Sarah wants to see how well Jose is progressing on his IEP sound localization objective. She signs in to the Objective Ed dashboard and looks at Jose's progress. Sarah sees that Jose has mastered turning left and right in the direction of a sound. Sarah configures Audio Asteroid to be a little harder. She tells Jose to be ready for a new challenge, and he just can't wait to play the new game.
Audio Asteroid can be configured so that you can have your students just finding sounds to their immediate left or right, which is also a great way to practice 90-degree turns, all the way up to finding sounds anywhere within the 360 degrees. And finally, from the Los Angeles School District, we'll hear from Sandy.
My middle school student played the Wayfinder game. She actually did very, very well on it. She's probably my best in terms of using it a lot. Her favorite is the sound search. She's also very musical, so I think that was part of what was appealing to her. And hours on all of the platforms, but the sound search games were her favorites. So like with the musical instruments, toys, and vehicle sounds, which actually was the most challenging for her. And honestly, when I played it, I found it the most challenging as well. Leaving it at an easy level for some of my students, but increasing the percentage, and I kept increasing their target. It became a little more challenging. I'd also like to say thank you. Whenever I post anything on your questions, you respond so quickly. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little about the two games that Sandy mentioned there, which are sound identification games. These are games to help students practice identifying and matching sounds. We have two games for this. Sound search, where students will match items on the left side of the screen to their corresponding sound on the right. How this game works is that the student will drag their finger down the left side of the screen and will offer the names of different items that they're touching. The student then drags their finger down the right side of the screen and listens to the different sounds that they're touching. When they find the matching sound, they just lift their finger to draw the connection. Audio memory is also a sound identification game, but this game also has students work on grid and memory concepts. In this game, students swipe to move through a grid and it will announce where they are in that grid using an alphanumeric grid layout, such as A1 or A2 or B2. Students can double tap to flip cards. They'll have to try and remember where that card is in the grid and match it with its corresponding sound. Now, with both of these games, you can choose exactly what types of sounds you'd like your students to work on. You can have them practice with musical instrument sounds, indoor or outdoor sounds, toy or vehicle sounds. There are many different sound packs that you can choose from. With audio memory, you can configure the size of the grid. So a student just starting out with grid concepts might work with a 2x2 grid, but it can be configured much larger. Now you'll have an opportunity to hear from Christy, who's an O&M at the Carroll Center in Massachusetts.
One student just figured out that she's learning things. It's not just games. And she goes, wait a second, I feel like I'm learning something. I'm not just playing a game. I'm like, ooh. She's in her early 20s, but cognitively delayed. What we did was on her iPad, we put stickers north, south, east, and west on the side. My other 18-year-old loves all the games. He's on the spectrum. He's also completely blind, really vocal about what's too easy, what's too hard, loves the Skyrunner game. He really sees that as a reward, so it's very effective for him. Two are middle school age. My younger kids, one of them super into playing the games, will play them all the time. The other one's more super good about letting me know when things were too difficult so I can change the level on it, or if it was too easy. They never wanted me to, but I'd make it a little harder for them. Have them get trained on using the dashboard. I would also recommend having, as much as you think your student's going to do well, start on the basic levels and then have them play through it a couple times and then see where their skills really are, because it's hard to. It has been so helpful having data in the first place with this remote learning, because it's so hard to write progress notes when you're just meeting over Zoom like once every 2 weeks. But if they can play these games, I at least have solid data that I can be like, even though we weren't meeting, look at this progress that they made on their directionality, and it shows. That was really helpful.
One of the games that Christy mentioned here that I want to talk about is our reward game, Skyrunner. This is a reward game that students can unlock by playing several levels of their other assigned games. While this game is not configurable like our other games, it still does have some educational content. This game is considered an endless runner style of game where the character will run endlessly down a platform and students will have to listen to audio cues and swipe to avoid obstacles. A lot of students really enjoy Skyrunner and unlocking this game. But if you feel the game isn't appropriate for a particular student, you can always turn it off on the web dashboard. Now, we also have a number of bonus activities in the application, such as daily quests. Students will receive quests every day to complete. These quests might have them sort 20 animals in barnyard or play 3 games of sound search. These are fun little activities for the student to complete when they're playing their games. As students complete these quests, they'll unlock rewards for their own pet in the application. Every student has their own personal pet to take care of, and this is a fully accessible pet. So the rewards that the students get not only will change the visual appearance of the pet, but also the types of sounds that it makes. A lot of students really enjoy taking care of and customizing their pet. I'd like you to hear directly from some students at the Overbrook School for the Blind who have used Objective Ed.
So I am TVI only, I'm not actually O&M, but I am teaching extended school year at Overbrook. We really just kind of in general this summer have been trying to tackle a lot of technology. We're trying to prepare for whatever event we're gonna have in the fall. So I'm using it with 2 students right now. So we've got Angela and Nick on here, which are the 2 that we're primarily using it.
Hi, Angela. Hi, Nick.
Hi. Like I had talked to both of these guys and identified ones that they thought that they could use. So for Angela, she's been working on using speed gesture, Simon memory game. So Angela and Nick, what do you think, guys? For a couple weeks you've been playing?
Yes. What gave you the idea of using the swivel chair for the audio asteroid? I love it because not only do you shoot at the asteroid with a laser in the game, but you can spin towards a certain way that you hear the sound at and then try to line up with the asteroid. Miss Eva bumped me up a little bit to a little bit of a harder level.
I only tried it once because spinning chairs that I tried before were not good, but I'm going to try again.
I really like all the gestures of Simon, especially the one where you shake the device. I just basically like the rest of the games in general, how you're able to use different gestures with voiceover and bump up your levels whenever you need it.
Do I teach both virtual and in person? Do I only get in-person kids? I think some of that still needs to be nailed down based on the numbers we get.
How did you come up with the virtual pet on Objective Ed? That seems kind of cool. Miss Eva, do you think you might be able to help me bump up to that level?
It looks like I had you selected for some of the hard skills, but not all of them. Angela, I just found the wayfinding and I added that.
Could you maybe add it to me too, Miss Eva?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
Definitely. I think that no matter who I get, among the options that I would have, all of this would be appropriate.
I would like to introduce Tim Falbert from the Wisconsin School for the Blind and Visually Impaired. And Tim will be talking a little about his school's experience with Objective Ed. Tim?
Sure. Thanks, Marty. So I teach at the Wisconsin School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and I help with assistive technology initiatives. I've long known about Marty's extraordinary work with creating blindfold games, as I'm sure many of you do. And my students had introduced me to them from virtually the first day they became available. And I really marveled at what he had done. And I also marveled when I started reading about his path to blindfold games with his commitment and clearly love for things in our world of blind and visually impaired students. And the thing I liked about the games too is that many of them were educational too. And I read about sets of them available for O&M. So when I learned that Marty had started Objective Ed, I was like, wow, fantastic. And the whole idea of gamifying O&M and Braille reading, I was like, great. I mean, that's where things have gone, and the educational world is gamifying it, but never in the our world with blind and visually impaired students that I had ever seen. So I knew I had to be a part of this. And so I was really happy when they announced their free distance learning program. And then I'm mainly going to speak just to the setup and support that we experience from Objective Ed, because I know you've heard from O&Ms and students, and you'll hear from another gifted O&M in a few minutes here. I found August Velk, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but he's Objective Ed's product manager. He had created a number of excellent videos and then webinars. So I found the setup of Objective Ed for our students and our O&Ms to be very easy. When I had a few questions, I could either find the answers in their online support and documents. And then I liked that the Objective Ed people were interested in ideas and suggestions I had for them. Not every company is, but that's to their huge credit. So we did a very successful pilot with two O&Ms and 6 students from our school. O&Ms loved that they could, you've been hearing about how easy it is to choose objectives and skills for students to work on. Our students had a great experience. Our principal was fine with ordering it. My O&M teachers love the data, as you've seen, that it provides. And I'm just going to end by saying the following. I've worked with many dozens of companies over the years, but really only a few of them have been on the level of Objective Ed. I look at the things that they've created, the critically needed tools for O&Ms and TVIs, especially during these crazy times when O&Ms and TVIs really need tools they can use. But I'm excited for when students return to schools, as all of us are, and Objective Ed tools will be just as valuable then. And then I've also been really impressed with Jason Stewart and August Velk and Marty and their commitment. And when I have questions or ideas, just with their level and quickness of support. So thank you, Marty. Thank you, Jason. And please thank August for me as well. Thanks for inviting me to be a part of this today.
Hey, Tim, it was so nice to hear from you. It's like, wow, that's cool.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. I'm privileged to be associated with you and this. Thank you, Marty.
Thanks again.
You bet.
So the next thing I want to talk briefly on is some of our tools for Braille literacy. I know most of the people are O&Ms, but it's about a quarter of you are also TVIs. We have 2 innovations. One is Braille sheets, where we put a sheet of Braille on an iPad, and the iPad knows what's on that sheet of Braille, and we build games around that. And the other is the Braille AI tool that uses speech recognition to help advance Braille literacy. I'm not going to go into the second one, but the following video will explain how the first one works, Braille sheets.
This is Sarah. For the past 8 years, she's been an itinerant TVI and O&M. Sarah works with 6 students who have vision impairments. She was just told that her school is going to a hybrid schedule. Some of her students cannot use printed materials, so she's been providing Braille instruction to them. Sarah heard of Objective Ed's Braille Sheets literacy tool and decides to give it a try. Rosa is one of Sarah's students. Last year, Rosa went to a stable and absolutely loved being with the horses. Peanut was her favorite horse. Rosa can't stop talking about horses and ponies. Recently, Rosa has lost enthusiasm for reading her Braille homework assignments. She says those stories are boring. Sarah writes a short story about the day in the life of a horse and copies it into the Objective Ed web dashboard. She picks the option to use Grade 2 Braille, then types in 5 questions for the Braille Sheets quiz game to use. Sarah prints the horse story on the school's Braille embosser and attaches the Braille paper to an iPad and hands it to Rosa. Rosa reads the title, A Day in the Life of Peanut the Horse. A huge smile appears on Rosa's face. Rosa reads through the story several times, laughing as she does it. Then, the Objective Ed Braille Sheets quiz game asks Rosa for the first question that her teacher previously typed into the web dashboard. The question Rosa hears is, where does Peanut the horse sleep at night? Rosa finds the word barn in its contracted form and double taps on it. She hears a and Rosa is told that she just won a few points in the quiz game. Later that night, at home, Sarah uses the Objective Ed web dashboard to check on Rosa's progress. She sees Rosa is progressing, and she wants more story games about horses and ponies. Sarah writes several more stories to give to Rosa for their next session.
Now I'd like to turn it over to Gina, who has been using Braille sheets for a while and has given us lots of great suggestions. Gina?
Thank you. And I would like to second what Tim said about you three, you, Marty, and Jason, and August. You are so wonderful because you listen to us if we have questions, if we have suggestions. So thank you very much for being so, having your company be so open to us. I think one of the things that TVIs need for remote and even when we come back is something that makes it fun for our kids to either learn or reinforce some of their Braille skills. So what I did is I made some tracking, and you probably can't really see this, but so
Marty, if you want to unshare real fast, I will make your picture big.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry.
There you go.
Okay.
I know Braille's hard to see anyway, but
yes, but if I get it just right. Okay, so this is an example of what one of the sheets will look like. And at the bottom, when you put this on the iPad, your child can calibrate using, and it talks you through it, but you can see that this is number 1997. And so you might have a couple of different sizes of sheets just because that's how you cut them. But it's so nice because when you put a Braille sheet on the iPad, then you calibrate it. You can even actually put it on a little bit crooked. Like if a child is doing this alone, it doesn't matter because if it is calibrated on the iPad, the answers will pop up. Excuse me. So some of the things that I did, I started with tracking and just some of letter discrimination. Then one of our science teachers asked if I could maybe incorporate a quiz. So she sent me some stuff, and I made some questions about clouds or, geography, and the kids are able to go on there and answer the questions. And if they're correct, great. If they're not, well, it all gets scored. So you can actually see how long it took and what their score is. So you can use those data when you go to an IEP. Some other fun things are contractions. You can come up with all sorts of interesting paragraphs that have all of the .456 contractions, for example, or .5 contractions, or just the AR or the WH or the GH. And what's wonderful is when you come up with a sheet of whatever, you'll do this on your dashboard on your computer, and then as you set it up, it will actually, as you go to each step, it will say, oh, what contractions do you want to include? So if you only wanted to use the AR contraction, that's what you can choose. You can have all of the others be, be grade 1 Braille. Then what's really interesting is prior to us getting our Braille, our Page Blaster. We just got a Page Blaster 2 weeks ago from APH, and I'm using Braille Blaster software, which is free from APH. So now when I download a BRF, before I used to have to put it on my desktop, and then I had to right click and go to Duxbury and I don't know, do a bunch of things. But now all I do is double click on the icon and it embosses. I mean, it's amazing, amazing. And so then all I have to do is I just cut it to a decent size that I know will fit on just our regular iPads. We don't use a mini. We haven't used anything except just a regular iPad. So then you use some easy dots to stick it on, or your student does, and you're set. So if you had 5 kids taking the same quiz for, in geography, well, you just emboss 5 and you cut them and you hand them out, and it's really, it's very simple. And one last thing really quick. Also, I had gone to building with patterns because I wanted to start with something a little bit, lower for some of our really young kids. And so I took out of Unit 4, I took just a few of the sentences, and the child can read the sentence, but then I have a little quiz that is put on the iPad, which makes it really fun for the kids that are really not wanting to learn Braille. They want something fun. So it's great because this rewards them with the fun sounds. The ones that are using Asteroids and some of the other O&M games, they love it. So I mean, we have incorporated a lot of different things, and anyway, we love it. So so are there any questions, or just turn it back over to Marty?
Okay, thank you so much, Gina. Let me share my screen one more time. So it's that kind of wraps things up. If you have any questions, I guess I'll turn it over to Jason now to answer some of the questions. Jason, you want to take it?
Sure, Marty. I do have several questions that have come in. I have put some questions back in the chat to individuals, but I want to address those with you all as a group. So let me just go through some of these. The first one we'll get to in a few minutes. Marty is going to talk a little bit about cost, and so I'll hold that until Marty gets to that slide and talks about it. Part of that question too, Marty, just for you to be sure to address when you do get to the next slide is this going to be, is the product going to be available through APH? So when you're talking about pricing, please address that for us. Next question that came through was related to the audio Asteroid. So it was really more of a comment. And the comment was stereo headphones must be necessary for Asteroids, right? And the short answer to that is no. The stereo headphones are preferred, but there's actually a setting within Audio Asteroid that will allow you to use non-stereo headphones as well. And I won't go into the details on how that works, but the short answer is stereo is best, but we can accommodate otherwise. There was a comment also from a private TVI and O&M that works with several school districts. Sometimes special education directors won't want to purchase something for a private contractor, and just thinking through how to accomplish a purchase when you are a private contractor. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat here in just a few minutes. I think it's on the next slide. I'm happy to visit with you individually. I've worked with lots of individual contractors and have some ideas and some suggestions on how you can work with your local school district to get them to buy into using Objective Ed with your students, even when you are a contractor. The next question was, can the teacher's dashboard be accessed on more than one computer? The answer to that is absolutely. The teacher web dashboard is accessed through just a standard web browser. So anywhere that you can get to a computer and log in, you'll be able to get to the dashboard. It's not for a dedicated device. Great question. Will there be an informational video for our principals and superintendents to view when we ask for this? We do have a lot of videos. Marty has shown you several of those today as we've gone through that are really short. Most of them are 2 minutes or less in length. And those are great to show your administrators because it doesn't take much of their time and it gets straight to the point on what we do. I'm also able to put together specific information for you based on your unique situation and help you have those conversations with your administrators as you need to. Then there were several questions, and I know some more have just come through, and I'll get to those here shortly. But some questions specific to the Braille. Can you use standard Braille paper? A little bit of confusion on how the Braille paper connects to the iPad. So yes, you can use standard grade Braille paper, and you use Easy Dots that Gina referenced. They really, the Easy Dots are a scrapbooking material that's used for folks that scrapbooks little sticky notes. It's about the same consistency of a sticky notepad. You attach those to the back of the Braille sheet and then just stick it right on the iPad. And then based on the configuration that's done, the iPad knows the alignment of that Braille sheet on the computer or on the iPad, and you're able to just tap and as it's asking questions, and it knows if you've selected the correct Braille. And then related to that, it says, are you going to come up with a page holder for 8.5 by 11 paper? So there will be no cutting that could put on the tablet. So it'd be quick and easy changing of the pages and only one calibration. The short answer to that is no, because each of the Braille pages or Braille sheets are individualized to the game that's being played and the questions that are answered for it. So you do have to calibrate each page as you attach it to the iPad. There are two ways that that's done. There's a code that Gina mentioned that allows the system to know which Braille sheet you're using, so what the content is on the Braille sheet. And then down at the very bottom of the Braille sheet, there are left and right dots that you tap on to let the system know where on the iPad itself it is, so that you so it's calibrated. If you print on standard paper, there's not a lot of cutting that has to be done. We have found that for some iPads with certain protective screens on them, it may be beneficial to trim the Braille sheet down, but that is not a requirement to do that. Okay, so let's look at the chat. Again, I see a couple more questions have come through. This one says, I see the app is free, but what's the cost for the dashboard program? Marty's going to talk a little bit about that next. Okay, can this be used on the Mat Connect? Marty, you may have to step in on this one. Right now, to the best of my knowledge, we are, for the Braille sheets in particular, designed just for the iPads. We have done some work looking at Android devices and some of the Kindle Fire tablets, but have found the best accessibility and the actual best use of the Braille sheets on the iPads. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Marty?
No, that's not really. We should probably move on if you want to the pricing, because we're running out of time. So.
Okay, I will individually answer some of the other questions that came through while you talk about pricing, Marty.
Okay, let me just, there. The quick one, as far as devices are concerned, we're right now mainly on the iPad and the iPhone. We're currently testing on the Kindle tablet. It's a very low cost kind of version of the iPad, about $70 or so, as well as Google Chromebooks and other Android devices. The product is available in English, Canadian, French, as well as Spanish. For the pricing on the product, it's sold as an annual subscription, basically $75 per student using the O&M and the AT games. And then if you want to also add in the Braille sheets or the Braille AI to it, that's $150 per student with a $1,000 minimum contract. If you don't have that many students there, contact Jason and we can work something out with you. So that that's kind of where the pricing sits. Again, if you want to participate in to win one of our Amazon gift card certificates that we're giving away, just make sure you put your name, email, school district, and phone number in the chat window so we can pick a bunch of the people to give out these
And
gifts.
Marty, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a list of the attendees' names and email addresses so that you can start that way.
Oh, then we'll get basically it's everybody.
Yes.
Then. Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll send that out. I'll kind of turn it back over to Jason now in the last 2 minutes, unless I guess Leanne, you want to probably give the closing code.
I'll do that after I end the recording. Go for it and finish.
Okay, Jason, why don't you take some more questions?
Okay, so just a couple of other quick questions that came in. One was about privacy and security. We take both very, very seriously, obviously, because we're working with student data. Actually, the way our system is configured, it requires very little personally identifiable information to be loaded in the system. Technically, you don't even have to put in the student's real name. There's no date of birth, grade level, that type of information. So very, very secure. And there was a specific question from someone that is using the system, wanting to know how to get to more of our training guides. If you'll go to the website at the top right, there is a section that will take you to all of the guides. I will save your information and also send an email to you. I think, Marty, those were all of the questions that came through. And just to echo what Marty has said, we appreciate you giving us a little bit of time today. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me if you have any further questions that I can answer, or if you would like more information.
One more thing I need to touch on before we close out, which is, no, it's not currently available through quota funds. However, we have a long relationship with APH and we continue to partner with them. So maybe sometime in the future, there'll be things offered of objective ed through APH.
The other thing is it available to be used on the Mac Connect, which is an Android platform?
We have not tested it with that yet, but if they should contact Jason, we can figure out how to figure that out. But we do work generically on Android. It's just, we don't recommend just getting it for specific Android unless it's gone through our QA, because we're very insistent on things being perfect.
Okay, I think that was the last one I saw. So I want to say thank you all very much for starting our new year off right. We appreciate you, and it has been very interesting to hear all the different teachers and how they've been being very creative. You have a great afternoon.